kung fu.
Hello everybody, welcome to the Comic Gear Movie Show. My name is Deshaun, and today I have another action classic for you in the shape of 2004's Hellboy. Now, 2004's I decided to go with 2004's Hellboy and not 2008 Hellboy 2, The Golden Army, because I do think, while I think The Golden Army is a better film, I do think that the original first Hellboy had a bigger impact. You know, I think that it did more for like the comic book genre in terms of like the impact, in terms of showing that these types of comic book things can be made. Because in the early 2000s, there were a lot of like they were experimenting with some comic book shit, right? Like in the early 2000s, you'd get Men in Black. Like Men in Black came out just not that long ago, and like I think Men in Black came out in like 1999, I believe. Men in Black had just come out. You would have like the League of Extraordinary Gentlemen. As bad as that movie was, you'd have like The Spirit. Like there was a lot of comic book stuff that wasn't traditional, wasn't Marvel, wasn't DC. There was a lot of stuff coming out at that time in the early 2000s. Later you get like Wanted and like things of that nature in the early 2000s. And like, I think, well, maybe some of those came out in 2010s, but like, you know, I always love to highlight these types of comic book movies, the ones that aren't like the traditional one, because like right now it's sort of like kind of in vogue to perhaps like make a comic like The Boys and like The Boys and Invincible and things of that nature. But back in the day, like that wasn't like, you know, that like if you could find yourself a comic book that could be adapted very well, a Spawn, like I said, a Spawn, a Men in Black, a Spirit, you know, Watchmen, later on, you know, Sin City. Like there was a lot of like comic books that weren't traditional superhero comic books that were coming out, and one of the best ones was Hellboy. So first of all, Hellboy stars the legendary Ron Perlman, and like let's just get this out of the way. Ron Perlman's casting as Hellboy has to be one of the all-time greatest comic book casting. Like, I put Ron Perlman as Hellboy right up there with Robert Downey Jr. as Tony Stark, right up there with Hugh Jackman as Wolverine, Ian McKellen. Like, you name the comic book character, Loki, whatever, you name them, I would put Ron Perlman's Hellboy right up top with it. I think, like, because if you've ever read the Hellboy comics, and and like, to be fair, I read a couple of those books after the movie. But, so it's hard for me to like, so in my brain, it's one of those things where it's like, wait, does it just, am I reading this like with the idea of Ron Perlman in mind, or is this book before Ron Perlman? But no, the Hellboy character in the comics has so much of Ron Perlman's demeanor and way about him. Like Ron Perlman has a particular like way about him where he just seems so leveled and so down to earth, but at the same time, like there's this graveliness to him, there's this gruffness to him, there's this matter-of-factness to him, just with his voice, like just his demeanor, his voice, and how he carries himself typically. And in Hellboy, he adds a little bit of, and he can also be kind of a little bit of an asshole a bit. He can be kind of a smart ass a little bit, and he adds that to the Hellboy character, because throughout the course of this movie, it's like, I think that this is Ron Perlman's best character. In my opinion, it's my favorite character Ron Perlman has played, because through Hellboy, he gets to really be himself. He gets to really show so much of what he does best, which is being this crotchety, kind of like silly at times, but like kind of an asshole at times, but at the same time he has this heart underneath all of his grouchiness, underneath all of his, you know, silly, underneath all of his sometimes cynicism, and all his bullshit, is a good dude. And he plays Hellboy with that. He plays Hellboy like the classic guy who has his armor up, but underneath all that armor, he's a good guy. And it plays so well. He's so funny. He's so charismatic and charming as Hellboy. Like I think it's Ron Perlman's best fucking role. And obviously he's in this movie with a couple other characters. Fucking Rasputin is a villain of this movie. So, you know what? Actually, I'm gonna get into that. The first Hellboy movie is about this cult of Rasputin. So like we all know Rasputin, you know, the crazy fucking dude in the early like 1916 or something like that, who the dude who like they tried to kill in a billion different ways. They had his hand cut off. He had his, you know, he was drowned, he was strangled, he was like all this shit, and he didn't die. Rasputin, crazy Rasputin, you know, that guy. And like one of the things around Rasputin, you know, long time ago, was that he was into the occult. And like obviously we know that shit ain't real, but in the Hellboy universe, it is. Because in the Hellboy universe is very similar to the Men in Black universe, except replace aliens with supernatural, and you get the same thing. Even to the point where Hellboy is the main guy in this bureau called, I believe it's called the Bureau of Paranormal Research and Defense. It's the MIB, dude. It's the Men in Black. It's basically the Men in Black, except supernatural, and Hellboy is their heaviest hitter. Because long ago in 1944, at the tail end of World War II, somehow like Rasputin and a bunch of Nazis do a Hail Mary attempt to summon a Cthulhu creature to help win the war against, you know, to help win the war for the Nazis. And fortunately for them, it was stopped by the professor. But fortunately for us, the portal that the Rasputin was using was open long enough for Hellboy to slip through. And ever since 1944, he has been working with the professor in the bureau to fight all supernatural threats. But guess what? But the movie is about Rasputin returning and trying to do what he is trying to do way back in 60 years ago. And from that perspective, it is a fun fucking movie. It's a fun movie. Now, granted, some of the CGI hasn't aged very well, which it's an early 2000s movie. You gotta kind of give it a little bit of grace there. But the special effects, the practical effects on Hellboy and on Abe, who is this other creature slash man who works with Hellboy, Abe Sapien. He's like this fish man who can like read people's thoughts and stuff. Like it's a very fascinating thing there. But Guillermo del Toro is who directed this one, who directed both of the Hellboy movies, has such detail when it comes to costuming and when it comes to the craftsmanship of the actual outfits, when it comes to the design of the monsters. And you know, because Guillermo's like kind of leans more into the Cthulhu like shit anyways. Like if you've ever watched enough Guillermo del Toro shit, you realize like he's into like the madness kind of shit. He's into like some really, like I said, Cthulhu like imagery, like the way, like even in the Blade movie, he directed Blade 2, and there was a little bit of that going on there with that creature, a little bit of tentacles action going on. He loves his tentacles, apparently. I don't know, like he loves, like he's got this thing for tentacles, dude. I don't know what's going on with Guillermo and the tentacles. But regardless of which, the costume design on everyone was dope. Particularly those two creatures. I thought, like, just the costuming in general. There was this one villain, I always forget his name. He's this Nazi guy who's like, he's a dead body, basically, full of sand. Like, just the idea of that. Some of these concepts they were playing with in this movie is so fun. It's like I say, the only problem I have is there's a character they introduced named John Myers. And it's so clear to me that John Myers is only introduced, and how I know this is true is because he's not in the sequel. In fact, they just give some hand-wavy line for why he isn't in the sequel. That screams to me is that the studio felt uncomfortable doing a movie where the main protagonist would be in total prosthetics, because Ron Perlman is, you know, he's in the Hellboy the whole time. And they didn't feel comfortable with that, so they wanted a human character so that the audience could connect to. But then the Hellboy movie succeeded it was successful, and Guillermo was able to come back with the sequel and be like, okay, I'm gonna just have Hellboy be the lead. We don't need to mix it up. Hellboy's the lead. And it's like, okay, cool. But this first movie, Myers doesn't really, like, he sort of serves a purpose, right? Because the idea is he's supposed to be the one who's saying the things that aren't said, helping Hellboy get past the death of his father, or the death of his father, helping Hellboy connect with Liz, who's once again another another character in the movie, who she's a fire starter. You know, we've seen that in old movies. She's a fire starter. But, like, overall, he didn't need to be in the movie. It's the weirdest part of the movie. It's like, he didn't really need to be here. I get it. You wanted a character to introduce this world to and whatnot, but I was like, I think you could have gotten that across in different ways than having a whole ass character who's just taking up space. And obviously he wasn't that important or impressive because you didn't even have him return for the sequel. You didn't even recast him. You just had a throwaway line. So overall, I enjoyed Hellboy. I think that although the special effects don't stand, I still think that the fight sequences are cool. I think that the costume designs on everything is awesome. I think that the world is fascinating and interesting. And Ron Perlman is just amazing in this character, in this role. This movie's worth the price of admission just for Ron Perlman alone. I would give Hellboy, 2004 Hellboy, an 8 out of 10. Anyways, thank you guys for watching the Comic Guy Movie Show. Please remember to like and subscribe, and I will see you guys on the next one.